come to this now. There's some good news, though, and some not so good news for consumers. GDP has increased by 1.6% in the third quarter of the year, beating expectations. But the bad news, on the other hand, is that both grades of petrol have now cost 59 cents a litre more. So what does this mean for you and I? Economist Dawie Roodt, ever so pleasant enough to come speak to us about this. Joining me, of course, this morning. Dawie, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. So what does this increase actually mean for the average South African? Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you very much. A 1.6% increase in GDP growth in the third quarter, and everybody is jumping up and down and very happy about that. But I think it's just a sign of how we've become accustomed by setting the bar very, very low. 1.6% is not good economic growth. We need to grow the economy at 4, 5, and 6% if we really want to make a dent in unemployment and poverty in South Africa. But the good news certainly is it is much better than expected. I expected economic growth in the third quarter less than 0.5%. And there was even a possibility that the economy can dip into a recession in the third quarter. But it came as a surprise then that the economy actually reported a relatively strong growth of 1.6%. And again, it's not good. If you could simply keep in mind that the population is growing at 1.5%, we're hardly making any progress if the economy is only expanding at 1.6%. Nevertheless, it is better than expected, and there are a couple of reasons for that. And if you want me to, I can unpack some of these reasons for that, but
yes,
perhaps I can just explain what it really means.
Right.
Economic growth in the third quarter is said to have grown at 1.6%. Now, without going into the technicalities of the statistics behind that and so on, basically what it means is that if the economy keeps on performing the way it has in the third quarter, then for the year, on an annualized rate, or then for the year, we can expect the economy to grow at 1.6%. So this is an annualized number. In other words, sort of applying it to an annual number. So if it keeps on growing like this, economic growth of 1.6% can be expected. Now, there are some technical reasons behind this, why the economy did a little bit better. One of the reasons is that the second quarter was quite a bad quarter. And since we calculate economic growth from one quarter to the next quarter, if the one quarter is quite bad, like the second quarter, then the third quarter or the subsequent quarter will look better simply because the previous quarter was much worse. Economists call that a so-called base effect. So there's a bit of a technical reason for that. But with that aside, let's just see where the economic growth came from. It came from sectors like, for example, agriculture did quite well, which is a good thing. But remember, agriculture is a volatile sector, so it's difficult to make estimates of that. But that's a good one. Another very good one that I'm very happy about is manufacturing did also well. And manufacturing is important because that's where we can potentially create a lot of jobs.
Right.
And then the third one is the stalwart. You can always reckon on the finance to be doing well, and finance and the related sectors also did quite well. So we calculate economic growth looking at the production side, and we've just spoken about the production side, and you can look at the consumption side of the economy as well, and there are some interesting things. If you look at on the consumption side, we exported quite nicely, which was good. Another good one, government spend a lot of money. No, that's not really good. We don't want government to spend too much money because government is not good at spending money, but that technically added to economic growth. And then the thing that I'm very concerned about is household spending was under pressure. And the reason is obviously because of high levels of unemployment and rising levels of inflation and
Dawie, I just want to touch on one of the increases you mentioned there quite interestingly. Agriculture, forestry and fishing up by 19.2%. It's interesting that we're seeing this growth, but those in the industry, in the sector, saying on the ground that growth wasn't necessarily felt.
No, it was certainly felt. We can see it, and agriculture is quite easy to measure that. The guys exported a lot. We can actually see that.
Okay.
And the other sectors, we can also see the factors. But just remember, and this is important, when we talk, most economic data are estimates.
All right.
They're not actual numbers. They are as close as we hopefully can get to the real number, but they are estimates. Other numbers, like, for example, the exchange rate is an actual number. We know what it is. But inflation is an estimate and economic growth is an estimate. And I can say that Stats South Africa is doing an excellent job. And if they tell you they estimate the economy or agricultural sector to have grown by 19%, then you can be pretty sure it is somewhere there. That's the first point. It is an estimate. And the second point is economics is not a one-to-one kind of thing. So if there's a X% increase in the petrol price, we're not going to see immediately an X% increase in inflation rate. It takes time. It takes time for all these various price changes in the economy to work its way through the economy, and it can take as much as 2 years. So whenever something happens in the economy, don't expect a similar or an opposite reaction somewhere else in the economy. Immediately, it takes time before you start feeling these effects.
All right. Well, in terms of the not so good news also that I want to talk about, as mentioned earlier, and as a matter of fact, throughout the entire show, both grades of petrol increasing by 59 cents per litre, diesel dropping, though, by 157 cents. What are some of the contributing factors here, Dawie, the main reasons for this fuel price adjustment?
There are only three major reasons that affect the petrol price. The one is, of course, the fuel levy. And the fuel levy is adjusted once a year, and that is adjusted in February. So in March, the petrol price will go up because of the change in the fuel levy or the tax in petrol. And we pay quite a lot on taxes. About 40% of what you pay for petrol goes to various taxes, but that only happens once a year. The other two factors are the exchange rate of the rand, the currency, and the other one, of course, is the international oil price. Now, what we have seen lately is the rand coming under some pressure, and we've recently seen the rand coming under some pressure, and that, of course, added to the petrol price. But the good news is that the international oil price has been drifting lower, and I expect the international oil price to continue to slowly get lower over the next couple of months. And there are reasons behind that. That has to do with the war in Ukraine, and it has to do with Venezuela starting to pump more oil and so on. But the bottom line is I think the oil price is going to be, say, $70, $75 or so in a couple of months' time, which means that the petrol price is likely to come down as well. The only outstanding factor will be the exchange rate of the currency. And we have seen the rand coming under some pressure the last couple of days because of the political shenanigans going on in South Africa.
Right.
So let's hope we get some clarity and calm there, and then the rand is likely to come back. I think, all in all, chances are quite good we're going to see the petrol price coming down quite nicely over the next couple of months.
This is the kind of optimism we need right now, the petrol price coming down. But Dawie, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Economist Dawie Roodt joining us, just giving us more clarity and context around what we've been seeing in terms of those third quarter performances from all the way from manufacturing, agriculture to transport, storage and communication. We've seen that agriculture there going up by 19.2%. The likes of manufacturing up by 1.3% in the third quarter, and transport, storage and communication increasing by 3.7%. But also, of course, the both grades of petrol going up by 59 cents and diesel going down. But there's some hope. There's some hope, as Dawie said, that we'll see, of course, that decline quite smoothly, hopefully soon.